Have you ever been stuck in the cycle of constantly letting yourself down? You might be in it right now, which is probably why you clicked on this video. You say you want to improve, you stick with it for a week or two, but for some reason, you just always end up quitting. You just can't seem to stay motivated. Listen, I've been there. But the thing is, you don't actually need motivation to stay consistent. You need discipline. In this video, I'll share the science-backed steps that I used to build unshakable self-discipline that actually work. And stick around, because at the end, I'll share the one overlooked habit that I use that completely changed my life. And by the end of this video, you'll have the exact formula you need to finally take control. Now, in order to understand how to actually build self-discipline, you need to understand where it comes from, which is the prefrontal cortex, area of the brain right behind the forehead. And put simply, its job is to make smart choices and resist bad ones, right? And there was actually a study conducted recently that tracked children from adults over 40 years. And what it showed is that the group who showed more self-control as kids actually had more active prefrontal cortexes as adults. And what does this mean? Well, this actually shows that the prefrontal cortex can be trained similar to a muscle. The kids who have been training it at a younger age had more active prefrontal cortexes and were more likely to resist temptations as adults. Now, when I found this out, it was a crazy realization for me, because what it helped me realize is, let's say you're going to the gym, right? You're hitting chest, you go on the bench press, and you just load up your maximum weight and you try to bench it. Now, that wouldn't make any sense, right? You're completely shocking your nervous system, probably gonna tear a muscle, and it's just gonna be a whole mess. You're gonna be tired the rest of the day. If you wouldn't do this when you're training a muscle, why would you do it when you're trying to train your brain? It's the same sort of situation, and this is what I kept doing over and over again. For a week, I would just implement all these changes into my life all at once. I was, trying to read a book and wake up at 5, 4 hours of work a day, all these at once, and I'm just overloading my prefrontal cortex, and I'm burning out after a week, which is this cycle that we just keep falling into, and this leads us right to the next point. If drastically changing your life at once is not very beneficial, then the obvious alternative is to start small and gradually increase so that we can get to the drastic change, but we're just not getting there right away. So what you're gonna do is build your prefrontal cortex to get comfortable with doing uncomfortable things by starting with some small practical changes, such as doing a few push-ups every morning, or when you wake up, instead of checking your phone, just go straight to the kitchen and drink a coffee, or read a few pages after you brush your teeth to go to bed. Start with these small changes, and then whatever area of your life you're trying to improve, just gradually increase the amount of productive change you're doing, so that over time you keep increasing and you get to this drastic change you want. Rather than shocking your prefrontal cortex, you're just kind of building it up like a muscle. 1 week you're doing 20s, next week you're doing 25s, and gradually increase so that you can do 45s in a month or so, and so you can get this change, but in a much more maintainable way rather than just going all in at once. And so I like to kind of think of this as planting seeds for your new habits. These small actionable steps that you're taking is the seed for your new habit. And with nurturing, with watering every day, with gradually increasing, you're sprouting these seeds up into the plants or the trees that they're gonna be, which is the habits that will eventually lead you into success in whatever endeavor in life you're trying to get it in. If you ask any successful person what makes them successful, I bet you most of them, it'll boil down to their habits. The reason for this, willpower is very limited. It's a limited resource, and habits are just kind of ingrained into our second nature, so it doesn't really feel hard to do them. And the way I like to think about this, imagine you went through a grueling day at work, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. You were late, customers, pain in the ass, your coworker is giving you crap for doing something. Everything, it's a hard day. You get home, I bet you're still gonna, brush your teeth, take a shower, do what you need to do before you go to bed, and it's not gonna feel hard. It might even feel refreshing. And the reason for this is because since we were little, we were trained, it became a habit to brush your teeth and take a shower before you go to sleep. And we can actually take advantage of this and, make our productive activities into these habits. There's actually research by psychologist Wendy Wood found that 40 to 45% of our daily activities were actually habits requiring no active decision making. So if we can convert our willpower intensive tasks into these habits, you can maintain discipline consistently even when your mental resources are low. Because what makes consistency so hard is that on these tough days where our willpower is just fully depleted, we have no more of that resource left to actually put into our task. We're drained out. So we need to put these productive tasks into habits that we can just run on autopilot so we can actually maintain consistency, because in the end, that's really all that takes you from point A to point B, to get you into that life you're desiring. It all boils down to consistency. So let's actually dive into some more practical advice here. Something that really helped me was the 2-minute rule. Now, the 2-minute rule was founded by James Cook in his book, Atomic Habits. You've probably heard of it. It's pretty popular. I totally recommend it if you haven't read it yet. It's completely changed the way and how I, view building habits. And it's where I got majority of this information from, actually. And you've probably already practiced the 2-minute rule without even realizing. I'm sure you can think of a time when you were in high school and you just had to get an assignment done that night. And you finished the assignment. Okay, I'm already doing this. I might as well knock out tomorrow's assignments as well while I'm at it, so I don't have to do it tomorrow. Same with, you're reading a few pages of a book, just a few pages, and you actually ended up reading a lot more than you had originally set out to. And that is essentially the effectiveness of the 2-minute rule. And the 2-minute rule, put simply, is you attack the task you want to just by doing the first 2 minutes of that task. And the reason this is so effective is because it breaks down that mental barrier of just getting started, which is where most of us fail. I heard this quote somewhere. I totally forgot where I heard it from, so I'm just going to plagiarize it as my own. But rather than waiting to feel motivated to do something, just do it until you feel motivated. Because 90% of the time, when you just get started on something, you're going to feel like continuing what you're doing. You're not just going to get started and then just stop. Most of the time, that's just not how our brain works. And it's just so effective because let's say you want to go to the gym. Okay, I'm going to tell myself I'm just going to put my gym clothes on and just go into the gym and just see who's there. I guarantee you're not going to go into the gym and not work out. Like, the gym is for working out. You're going to, because it's in front of you. And the same thing with reading a book, as we mentioned earlier. If you just set out to read a few pages, you're going to read more than a few pages. If you can just get yourself to get started by convincing your brain that you're just doing a smaller task than what you're actually planning on doing, it's totally effective for staying consistent because it's just able to get you started, and that's really the hardest part. Another effective strategy you can use to build new habits is something called habit stacking. Now, before I dive into what habit stacking actually is, I want to share something with you. So I used to struggle a lot with going to the gym on days that I was working a lot. So I'm not really a morning gym person. I always go at night. So on days that I would close from 2 to 10, it was a long day. Most of the time, I just wouldn't end up going to the gym that day, which would really disrupt my workout schedule, and it would throw my progress off. So what I did, which I didn't even realize was habit stacking at the time, is after work, I would just go to the gas station, buy an energy drink, and drink it. Now, this was already piggybacking off of the connection of leaving for work. I leave for work, I go to the gas station, drink an energy drink. Now, this gave me no choice but to go to the gym because I had to work this caffeine off. So what habit stacking essentially is, as you can probably tell from this, is building a new habit by piggybacking off of the connection of an existing habit. So I do existing habits and then I do new habits. It's a lot easier than just cold turkey getting started on this new habit. The way I like to think of this is this analogy. Imagine there's a bus. It's already en route, right? It already has 6 stops it has to stop in while it's in its route. And it gets a call, hey, I need you to stop at this new location. Okay, not a big deal. I'm already going. There's already a connection here. Now imagine this bus driver gets a call, hey, I need you to go stop at this location. Okay, well now this bus driver has to get up, go in the bus, start the bus, go to this location. It's a lot harder than just adding another stop. And that's essentially what you're doing. Let's say you just want to start by getting in shape. Okay, well, I brush my teeth and then I do 10 push-ups. And okay, let's say you're starting a new business and you want to get started on the work. Okay, and you already have a connection to drinking coffee in the morning. Just throwing an example out there. All right, I make my coffee, and while I drink my coffee, I start doing work. And the reason this is so effective, you're piggybacking off this connection, right? So you're kind of also breaking through that mental barrier of getting started, but you're also just reminding yourself that you need to get started. You're not leaving your brain room for procrastination. That's essentially the goal, is beating procrastination. You're making the coffee. Okay, I know I need to do my work while I'm drinking this coffee. And you're not giving yourself room to say, I'm gonna do it later. And habit stacking was by far probably the most effective way that I've began to build new habits. This next idea is a little off topic, but I just really wanted to include it because it's something that helped me a lot. And that is setting actionable goals. Now, most people, when they set goals, you probably just write down a result you want to achieve. I want to get a six-pack by 2026. And that's fine, but there's a much more effective way you can do this. And what I actually did is, let me give you an example journal I did. I want to get in shape, okay? Write down every weekday I will come home from work, have a coffee on the porch, put my workout clothes on, and tell myself I'm just gonna go to the gym for a few sets. Now that is very specific. The reason that's so effective is because, for one, you're putting it into existence. You're writing it down, reminding yourself. For two, it's so specific that your brain doesn't really have an excuse on how to get out of that. If you just write down a goal with no plan, your brain has a lot of wiggle room. Your brain loves to give excuses. So when you're very specific, you're not giving your brain any room for excuses. It simplifies what you need to do. It's on paper, just puts it into existence. Another great way to begin to build self-discipline is setting yourself up for success. And what I mean by this is another idea I got from Atomic Habits. It's called optimizing your environment. Before we get into it, let me ask you this. Can you think of a time you walked into the kitchen, you opened the snack drawer, and then boom, there's loads of snacks. You instantly put yourself in a situation where you kind of have to fight a war with yourself. Do I take it? No, I shouldn't take it. It's not good for me. And I could probably say 80% of the time, you're gonna grab a snack, boom, consistency out the window. For me personally, that story resonates pretty deeply. I really struggle with just eating junk food, not eating right. I was consistent in the gym, but I just couldn't get that second level of eating right. So my problem, I knew where the snacks were, and just subconsciously I would open the drawer, even though I knew I shouldn't. So what I did about this is I just simply put the snacks elsewhere, put them somewhere hard to reach. Not get rid of them or anything like that, but just putting them somewhere else so that they're not so openly available to you. Your environment influences you a lot more than you think. It's either pushing you and making your habits easier via, putting visual cues for good habits, like putting a book on your bed. So when you go to sleep, your book is there and you're reminding yourself it's a visual cue for good habits, or it's making bad habits harder to fall out of. Opening the snack drawer and the bad habit is just too readily available for you. But we can really utilize this to begin to reinforce good habits. An example, leaving your gym bag and your gym clothes just already hung up and ready to go. So when you wake up, your gym bag's already packed, your gym clothes are right there. It's a visual cue for you to go to the gym, right? When you set yourself up and when you put your environment in your favor, it's just less willpower you're having to constantly put into these good habits, and just setting yourself up for success just really allows you to use less and less willpower and just start building these habits. And lastly, before I end out here, I know that sometimes building new habits can kind of get to feel like all work and no fun, which is why this last tip is actually very important, and that's reward yourself for progress. It might sound stupid to some people, but if you can subconsciously connect as much dopamine as possible to the action or goal that you're trying to stay consistent with, your brain, it's going to be a lot easier to actually stick with it. For me personally, I did this with going to the gym, right? Every week I would buy creatine, I would buy a new supplement, I'd buy a new lifting belt, some boxing gloves, protein powder, something like that. And every week it's a new variable, it's a new excitement in my brain. It's just connecting more dopamine with going to the gym, it's changing it up. It's just something that is actually very helpful. Man, it might not seem like it, but just connecting that dopamine makes it significantly easier to stick with it because Your brain isn't thinking like, oh, this is work, you know, it's thinking, oh, this is something fun, something I can get dopamine from. On the other hand though, you do have to be careful with this, because if you reward yourself with something that's too detrimental towards your progress, it can actually be more of a hindrance rather than a boost. If you reward yourself with video game time, your brain will be like, oh, well, this is significantly more dopamine than what I got earlier. You just have to be careful with how you do it. Make sure your rewards are somewhat beneficial towards your progress, and it's not too dopamine releasing that it's going to hinder your progress with being consistent with your goals. And there you have it. There's the science-backed steps that I use to build self-discipline. And before we end out here, I just want to say this is not a cheat code. This isn't a easy way to building discipline and achieving your goals. Setting out and achieving your goals is hard. It will be hard. It has always been hard, and it's not going to stop being hard. There's days you're going to wake up and you're just not going to feel like doing anything, but I cannot emphasize this enough. Those are the days where champions are made. You have to set out and actually do the actions that move the needle on days you don't feel like it. And that's really, if you guys leave with one thing today, it's just stay consistent. Consistency was, is, and will be the only way to actually achieve your goals. It's the only thing that actually moves the needle. And these steps I explained today, they're big helps in just building that discipline that you need to actually stay consistent, but it's not an end-all be-all. The only thing that will help you achieve your goals is staying consistent. Let's make today day one. I wish you guys the best of luck.